When you can smile, you're telling your brain, I'm okay. When you can't smile, when you can't laugh, you're not okay, and the brain knows it. So again, if that's all you're telling your brain, you're on that train track now. Your brain will automatically go there, all right, without stopping, and you're setting yourself up for a crash.
Hey guys, before we get started, I have one quick favor to ask of you. Can you please hit the subscribe button so that more people can find the show? Thank you. When it comes to stress management, where did that journey begin for you?
Oh, it began with my own journey. I royally blew it in my early 40s. I was a workaholic. I was working in a high stress job. Burnout was very, very prevalent in it. And I lasted longer than most, but I ended up burning out. And it's simply because I ignored the warning signs. I knew they were there, but I didn't, other than acknowledging them, I just bypassed them and swept them off and kept pushing to do my job and do it well. And it cost me my job because I totally burnt out and was flat on my back for about a year. And that wasn't fun. So I didn't work for a year. And then I started going back into the workforce. It was only 4 hours a week. And to really fully recuperate from the point of where I lost my health, it was a 10-year journey. So that is a lot of time to lose because I mismanaged my health. But that is why I'm on a mission now to help others be more aware and make better choices than I did.
You said you saw the early warning signs, but you chose to
Mhm.
bypass them.
Mhm.
What pushed you to drive past them?
It was probably, I'm not going to, let me remove the word probably. I grew up in a farming family and they have good work ethics. Like you get the job done and then you go play. Well, I kept getting the job done, but not going and playing. I just kept working and working and working. So it was really what I grew up with. It was very ingrained in my brain. And I loved my job. It was actually my favorite job. So yeah, it was learned behavior would be the short answer on that one.
Yeah, I can relate to that to the farming work ethic. I grew up on a dairy farm, and it was always the ethic. I was the eldest son on a dairy farm, and with 5 kids, so there was always work to be done. So if you were ever seen
Mm.
resting, it was like, what are you doing lazing around? Are you bored? If you're bored, there's work to be done. And because of this, it was a hard work ethic. And it did serve me
Yes.
well when it came to getting a part time job, going to university, and really putting my head down, especially when it came to the choice of get a good job or you'll be stuck with the farm. And I was like, okay, I'm going to put my head down and get a really good job because that's the last thing I want. Um, but that didn't serve me as I went later in life. And when I did
Yeah.
get a job and I was really pushing my limit, but it was running away from that fear of both not wanting to go back to the farm, but also the fear of if you're seen not to be doing work, then the, and there's always work to be done, then you're being lazy, you're being unproductive, and you're not living up to your worth. That you'll never be good enough if you have a moment to spare.
Those labels are critical. Now, my parents never labeled anything like that, but that would have been my internal conversation. But very much, very much. I think it was even worse for you. Dairy farms are the absolute worst. You cannot leave it, and you're married to it. At least in my farming family, it was a little bit different. We did have time to play, and our family loved to play. But yeah, the identity of this is who I am. If I do a good job, then my identity was very tied up in the performance. And that's what broke when my health broke is I could no longer, or I didn't want to tie it into my performance anymore. I still do excellent work and I still probably work longer than most people, but my identity is not tied up into it. I control it. I'm not driven like I was before. And that's what makes all the difference. I can stop and start. So think of it like a train on a track. You're just following this track and you're going where it's set. But as a taxi driver, I get to stop and start and go wherever I want, when I want. And therefore, I work with my stress a lot better now, way better. Does that make sense for you? Like the analogy of the train and the taxi? One is driven and self-set, the other you have control over and you can stop and start at will.
Yes, and it's probably me overthinking the analogy that because when you go on the train, it's very direct, but it also comes at um it's the easier option in a way for some people because it's like, oh, the train is more cost effective. I can just go from point A to B and not have to worry about everything in between. Whereas a taxi, it's like, okay, I know I can make 10 stops here, but it's really going to cost me. It's really going to cost my pocket. Is that taking your analogy a step too far?
Part of it's correct. So if we go to the train, every time you reinforce a similar thought that you've had before, you reinforce the neural pathways in your brain. All right. And so it does become like a train track. What you believe, what you do sets the track. So you go zoop, and you're there. All right. Like the German Autobahn, really fast, or the Japanese bullet train, really fast. But the taxi doesn't have to cost you, but it will cost you if you ignore warning signs. All right. The train ignores all the warning signs and just takes the fast track. But with a taxi driver, he's watching for the red lights and the yellow lights and the green lights. And as long as a person is doing that, and I'm thinking of the same trip. So I guess I wasn't quite clear with the taxi driver. It's one trip, but you've got many stoplights or green go lights or yellow lights that you ebb and flow through traffic. You avoid dangerous scenarios. You slow down, you speed up. That's what it should be like if you're taking a healthy control. But if you're being driven by because the pathway in your brain is like, you've trained it so well to be a workaholic, ignore all the warning signs, your identity is tied up in it. That's really where the danger lies. It's not so much the taxi, it's the train track.
Yeah, I think that's an important point about how your brain is wired. And if you're wired to be more um erratic and indecisive and always, let's say, following the shiny objects, it's going to be very hard to be focused. You're going to be driving around New York City in that taxi. You're going to have that. You're going to have the crazy taxi driver. I'm like
but,
really
but
overthinking
if
this
you are the
analogy.
Yeah, but you've got it wrong. You're not the passenger, you are the driver.
Okay, well, okay, so you're the taxi driver.
Yeah. So you
Okay,
get to monitor traffic, monitor what's healthy, not healthy, all right, and make really good choices and get to where you need to go safely and hopefully in a relaxed state. But if it's New York, it's probably not too relaxed. I used to live in LA, so I know what that driving was like in New York would be very, very similar.
yeah, I think I just find city driving is stressful, but I think that's what our workplace environments are like anyway. Most of them are very hectic, busy places. And as high achievers, we don't like to be in the quiet side or doing the calm work. We want to be in deep in the challenging things because that's where
Yes.
the sense of achievement and validation comes from. That's where the sense of being productive comes from. And also for many, they like to be in the spotlight or to be seen. Well, there's a two. So some they like their outcomes to be seen and to be recognized and appreciated, but often they like to work in the background and not have the attention on them because they feel put on the spot.
That would be more for introverts. Extroverts, it would be a little bit different. They love the attention. They love the limelight. All right. So I heard you speak more from personal introverted scenario,
Definitely the
which you have
personal
shared with me
introverted, yes.
prior. And I'm actually, excuse me, I'm actually an introvert also, maybe not to the same degree you are. And I can step forward and be an extrovert, but I really do prefer to be off the limelight and in the shadows and just doing my thing and not have people notice me except for when it's needed, you know. One of the stressors today, especially if you're out on social media, is I don't like social media. It is pretty nasty out there. And that's when, for me, it's not safe to be out in social media. Because there's too many people that don't give a rip and they are just out to, um, you know, do whatever they want to do without respect for the other person and the impact on it. So there's lots of different stressors out there. And that, for me, is one of them. And that's why I don't tend to work that side of things too much. I get somebody else to do it, you know?
Yeah, I guess that side of social media, when people are really going out of their way to hurt or offend others, that comes from a place of hurt themselves. That's a void that they're trying to fill. If anything, they're deflecting what they're feeling themselves and trying to fill that gap by making someone else feel the same way or feel worse than them so that they feel that they're at a higher standard. And so when I see that, let's say on social media, I like to turn a blind eye to it, but I don't internalize it too much. If if I see it on social media, I'm like, okay, they're going through something. I'm not going to engage with it because that encourages it. That helps it to foster. But I can just say, okay, I don't know what they're going through, but I'm going to carry on my way as long as it doesn't affect me. If I can, if they're not in the place where they're looking for help, then I cannot help them. If they're offending other people on social media, then I have to back from it. The only time is if it's something that is very offensive or something that I feel is going to harm someone else, then it's okay. Time to escalate this or report this.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree that they are trying for a one-up position because their identity is less than. There's actually two ways to bring equality in relationships. One is to pull the person up, or the other is to pull them down. All right, both ways will bring equality, or it can bring an imbalance depending on how bad they push down. But yeah, it's just, I don't like social media for what it is. It wasn't meant for that, but that's where we are today with the negative culture, you know, that we have. I grew up in a different era where you honored one another a lot more. You were respectful, even if you didn't want to be. That's my culture. And I don't see that in today's society. So I just, for me, it's easier because I don't do well in social media. That's where my introvert comes. That's why I pay somebody to work my social media, and it decreases my stress. You know, I keep an eye on it, but I don't have to interact with it. I am happy. So there's stress management. Number one is recognize what stresses you. And for some people, like I have a girlfriend who loves social media and she's always in there, but she's very extroverted, right? But for me, I'm total opposite. I don't like it. So I hand it off to somebody because with my business, I need to be out there, but I don't need to be doing it. It's just like today, I hired someone to help me upgrade my website. That stresses me out. I don't want to do it. Hand it off. Keep my stress down. I don't have to be the be all end all. I don't have to know everything. I just need to look at what I can do well, do the things that I have to do when I can't find anybody else, and really monitor my stress. Because what I learned in my early 40s is that when I don't, my health will pay for it. And maybe not initially, but I know the ramifications of long-term ignoring one's stress or stressors on the body. And in fact, there's a Canadian doctor. His name is Gabor Mate, M-A-T-E, and he says that all, not some, all repressed emotions are the cause of disease. All. And for a medical doctor to say that And he used to be one that didn't even look at this kind of thing. All right. But it's a wake up call when a doctor, a medical doctor who's ahead of many different departments, says that all repressed emotions. So if people want to take down their stress, it's like stop avoiding. And like when you shared your methodology for dealing with stress, I went, you're somebody that's actually worked through his stuff. I can tell by your answer. All right. You're not avoiding, you are stepping forward and dealing with it and keeping your stress levels low. And we don't have to do that in major ways. If we keep taking things down as small, little bite-sized pieces, they never have to get big. Or if you have a big one, just again, keep biting away at it. And how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You know, eventually it'll be gone.
Yeah, that's the big thing with give yourself some leeway. It was always about people get overwhelmed by all the stress management and burnout prevention, all these techniques that are out there. People just throw a toolbox of 100 things you can do to cure burnout, to get back to normal, but they never show them how to do any of them. And if you throw 100 tools at me, a high achiever, I'm going to try all 100 of them. I'm going to do everything to get me back to feeling normal as quickly as possible, rather than giving me one tool and being like, try this and see if this works for you. Just try this for a few days and see if it makes a difference. And just in that moment, it was taking a step back, taking a deep breath, and learning to be present with myself. And I was like, oh, that was a big ask for me at the time, because I always wanted to look for distraction, anything than to be alone with my thoughts. And by focusing on that one thing, and I was so uncomfortable with it at the time because there was so much to process and to regulate. And I was like, no, I'm only focusing on one thing right now, and this is it. And once I got comfortable with that, it was like, okay, now it's time to try something else. And if something else doesn't work, I can always come back to what does work. And just by giving myself that space and allowing myself to fail, if this tool doesn't work out for me, it doesn't mean I'm a failure. It just means this wasn't the right one for me. I can try something else. And even just in something as simple as that, I was like, wow, this is so simple but so effective, rather than giving me an encyclopedia and saying, read that and do everything inside that, and that will make you a genius at everything. By breaking everything down into small, simple steps, and then only choosing one of them, and then saying, try that until you see something happen. You either like it or you don't like it. And that's where it all started for me, because I was similar to you. It took me about 3 years before I got a hang of my burnout. It was a lot of trial and error over the years. But for people nowadays, when they want to go to burnout, they're saying, "Oh, here's seven tips and tricks you can use right now," or here's 40. Here's a toolkit of 40 things you can do right now. And it's like, what if we could give them one place to start? What's one thing they can do right now that can put them on the right path? And just try, yeah, exactly. Just try one thing right now, and that will get you on the right
So
path to recovery.
let me give you the one thing that worked for me. All right. So for me, when I stopped fighting my physical body and trying to do more than what it was capable of, the doctors didn't have a label for it back then, but it now they call it chronic fatigue syndrome. And so when I tried to push beyond my chronic fatigue, I would actually set myself back. The day that I said, okay, I'm going to stop judging myself from what I used to be able to do to what I can do now in this moment, that was my pivotal point of getting better, because now I'm honoring and respecting my body, and I'm not trying to push it beyond what it can do. My friend put it really well. She said, and she was talking about herself, she said, My body used to have to listen to me, tell it what to do. Now I need to listen to my body and let it tell me what I can do. And I just love that when she said it. If we listen to our bodies, and that's part of what I teach in my 8-week course, is listening to your body, because a lot of people, especially high achievers, we're not listening to our emotions. We just shut it down and we're the workaholic. But your physical body will actually tell you if you are stressed, low stress or high stress. It will tell you. And when people start listening to their bodies, then their health can actually turn around, and crisis, burnout, whatever they're dealing with can turn around. And I'll give you a simple example. I had a lady, her name is Hannah, and she's given me permission to use her story, and I've written it up and that kind of thing. She had seizures her whole life, grand mal seizures, sometimes more than once a day. And so obviously she didn't have a life. She was in her mid 40s with 4 kids and a husband. And after she, even within the 8-week course that she was taking and learning how to listen to her body, her seizures began to reduce. 8 months after the course was over, she was now at a 70% reduction in seizure activity. Like the doctors were saying, this is unheard of. But I use that example to show how powerful, when we start listening to our bodies, the body will heal and repair itself. And for her, it gave her life back again. In fact, she's becoming my business partner in the near future, because it's just such an amazing story and testimony of what listening to your body can do. So people can use that to prevent a health crisis, or even emotional, mental burnout crisis, or they can use it after the fact to start healing back to a place of wholeness. And that's what I did. I had to start listening to what my body couldn't do, and then that allowed my body to heal and repair. There was things emotionally that I had to work through, but that listening to the body was pivotal, absolutely pivotal.
Yeah. I hear it a lot when people shame themselves for getting overwhelmed or stressed, or when they get burnt out. They're like, oh, this shouldn't have happened to me. This has never happened to me before. But
Mhm.
when you reach that state of pure mental, physical, and emotional exhaustion, that's a very natural response to your body giving you warning signs over a long period of time. And your body finally is
Mhm.
saying, look, I've been trying to warn you, but this is it. I'm putting this in. I'm stopping you before you cause serious harm. It's the same as
Mhm.
when we get a pain response. It's our body gives us a warning to prevent further injury. So it's the
Correct.
same as when we get that trigger, or when we get exhausted, our body is giving us a signal to say, okay, now is time for recovery. This is where you take a step
Right.
back, rather than people reaching out for something like caffeine or painkillers or anything to just push the needle a little bit further, and then think, oh, and then afterwards they wonder why they're even more exhausted. It's like, well, you use it to push the needle a bit further. You're on borrowed time. That's what that is. You need to allow extra time now to recover.
I like how you said that. Borrowed time. That's really a good way to phrase it. Like for me, if I look at how it progressed, initially it was just feeling more tired than normal. And then it got to, I came home from work and I would crash, meaning I would lay down and sleep through the night. And then I found myself becoming hypersensitive to scents. I couldn't walk down a grocery store aisle in the detergent section because of the perfumes there without getting a migraine. And then it progressed into everything that I was eating, I found out I was allergic to. Like my whole body was just starting to go on hyper alert. All right. And it's a lot more garbage to deal with when you wait till, okay, we got food issues, we've got scent issues, we're sleeping, where if I had just adjusted, course corrected with the tiredness, the initial tiredness, I never would have walked that other pathway. And I'm sure the same was for you, that had you listened to what your body was saying and made good choices, all right, that you wouldn't have ended up burning out like you did.
Yeah, exactly. And it's something that surprises a lot of people whenever I tell them my burnout story and I say, oh, look, I hit rock bottom with burnout at 27 years old. And 9 out of 10 times people say, at 27 to burn out, that doesn't happen to 27-year-olds. That happens to people in their 40s and 50s. It's usually late in your career before you burn out.
Yeah.
And it's such a dismissive way of invalidating someone's feelings. It's like saying that, oh, you can't get sick or you can't get overweight if you're young. Oh, no, that's something that happens. You can't get diabetes if you're young, and you have to get it in old age. Or you can't get a certain thing when you're young, you have to wait until you're old. And it's like, if you are not dealing with intense levels of stress, if you're not managing your health, if you're not regulating your emotions, if you are, again, not listening to your body, then of course your health is going to deteriorate very quickly and very rapidly. And for me, it was over the course of 6 years, six years of
Mm.
intense work. And again, I was putting things in place where it was like, okay, I was on a diet of like Mars bars and coffee and Monster energy drinks. And then the Monster energy drinks weren't working anymore. So I was getting a like pre-workout from the gym, and I was like taking scoops of the pre-workout and having that like in between lunch breaks just to give me energy to get through the day. And I was normalizing that behavior. And then I found out I was so desensitized to caffeine that it had zero effect. And I made one change to, I was like, okay, I can't be drinking this much Monster energy drinks every day. I need to make one change. And what I did was I drank half a can, but then I'd dilute it and I'd fill it up with water. And I'd keep on drinking. And then when it got about halfway again, I'd fill it up with water. And then I found out after a week that there was no energy drink left in the can. It was just a can full of water. And it was the habit wasn't drinking the energy drink, it was drinking out of the can.
Right.
And I completely weaned myself off of it then because I was like, okay, I don't need this. This was a habit of drinking from the can. I wasn't looking for the caffeine anymore. And it
Right.
was again back to the point of me looking for that borrowed energy and borrowed time from consuming caffeine when my body was telling me that I was exhausted. And that's where it all stems from, listening to our
So
bodies.
you're really talking about priorities there. You understood your body was exhausted and you were counteracting it with the energy drink. But when your health broke, you actually had to make a right choice and put your body first, not minimizing, not denying, not, just pushing it aside or compensating. You began to honor your own physical health. And I love how you actually weaned yourself off. Like the fact that you recognized it was drinking out of the can that was, the habit. That was really powerful the way you did that. And again, my guess is nobody taught you. You just intuitively started doing something and it worked for you, and became very successful for you, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think that comes down to I have a very scientific mind. My background is microbiology, so I'm very scientific about how I do everything with myself. I'm my own test subject for many things. So that was one thing I was like, okay, when I was looking at how much caffeine I was consuming, I was like, how do I wean myself off it? Rather than going cold turkey and then going on a binge a few weeks later, it's like, okay, how can I reduce this a little bit over time until I
Yeah.
realize, oh, I'm actually not consuming it at all anymore. It's the same as people who put sugar in their tea or coffee. If they're putting four
Mhm.
sugars in, try putting in three and then move to two and then move to one. And then maybe try a sweetener and see if that's okay. And then if you don't like the taste of the sweetener, oh, the coffee actually tastes great on its own. I enjoy the taste of black coffee. And that was it was those small incremental steps that worked for me. It was not an
Well,
overnight fix.
Yeah, no, it isn't. And I would add one other thing to that, because coffee drinkers or smokers or drinkers, they tend to do it at the same place at the same time, relatively same time. And if you change the location, you really have to change the location and when you do it, how you do it. So if we take smoking, they'll have a newspaper with a coffee in the morning sitting at the kitchen table. Well, the location is the kitchen table. Go to the living room. Don't do the news. Don't read the newspaper, and change your coffee for half diluted coffee or something like this. All right. So when you change all those elements, you'll even become more successful. You obviously didn't need to in your situation, which was, no problem. People have to experiment, and that's what I get my clients to do. That's what I do, is I experiment. What works, what doesn't work. I had a bad cough. Coughing was going around here last month, and that meant I couldn't have cream in my coffee. But I don't like coffee as strong with no cream in it. So I would, put a third of a cup of coffee and then the rest hot water. And I'm still doing that now. And it's actually getting me away from the cream in the coffee, though I still do miss it. That's the best way to have coffee. But for me, here's the problem. We usually don't shift unless we have to shift for a certain reason. I had the cough, I needed to talk without coughing, and therefore I had motivation. But the beautiful thing is you actually don't need to be motivated to change. What you need to do is take the step down so tiny the brain does not resist you. There's a beautiful book out there if people want. It's called Tiny Habits. I did not write it. But he just talks about taking it down so small, your brain doesn't resist, and it's a no-brainer. Because once your brain feels successful, it wants to do more and more and more of it, right? Your brain actually repels the difficult stuff. It doesn't want to go there. That's why trying to change is so hard, is because it's not fun. It's painful to look at circumstances or situations or relationships that, or maybe your childhood issues. Those are painful things, and the brain will literally avoid those unless you can somehow bring pleasure into it through reward or modeling it for somebody else. Or there's just different ways to do it. But that's a huge reason why people do not work on burnout issues, is because the brain is actually wired to not go there if it's too hard. So take it down to the smallest element, and the brain won't find it hard, and you will be able to conquer it one little tiny step at a time. Did that make sense to you, what I just said?
Yeah, part of what you just said, I think another element of it is if you make it fun. And that's
Mm-hmm.
something that our brain doesn't like to do, especially when we're so work oriented. And anything that sounds fun is like, oh, but if it's fun, it's not productive. And it's like, oh no, it can be very productive and it can be fun. But as soon as you implement if you make something fun, it's easier to track progress. For me,
Mm-hmm.
what I like to do is I gamify everything. I grew up with
Mm-hmm.
video games, and the way that they hook you into the game is by tracking your progress, by leveling up, by gaining experience and getting rewards. So if
That's
I
right.
can do the same thing in my real life, if I can create these side quests that I can choose throughout my day to get bonus experience, then that will help me to track my progress. And then I get to choose what reward I get when I build up enough experience points to spend. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
I could pick one. One of the first ones I used to pick was starting my day with a glass of water. I was like, if I start every day with a glass of water, I'm going to be hydrating my body first thing in the morning. I'm going to have a clearer mind for thinking. And it meant delaying my coffee for maybe the first 2 hours of the day. And I was like, okay. And me getting scientific again, I know that coffee works better later in the morning rather than first thing when you wake up because your cortisol levels are too high. So I was like, okay, starting my morning with a glass of water, that's my win for today. The next
Mm-hmm.
one was smiling in the mirror. And this is one of my favorites. And it was when I get up in the morning, brush my teeth, and I see my reflection, I smile at my reflection. So the win was me smiling,
Mhm.
and the reward was someone smiling back, my
Mhm.
reflection. And I was
That's
like,
right.
great. That was the quest done. Reward, got the reward for smiling. Next thing was like, if you want bonus XP, try smiling at someone else and see if they smile back. If
Mhm.
they smile back, that's bonus reward. And if they don't, well, you already got your reward today with your reflection smiling back at you. But there's a good chance that if you smile at someone, they will smile back at you. And if you're smiling more throughout your day, it's going to boost your mood, because even if we fake smile, that boosts our mood. But if you're seen as the smiley person in your day to day life, whether that's in your home, when you're out in the street, when you're in work, if you're seen as the person who's always smiling, it's going to make you more approachable.
Yeah. I'm going to add to that. So I live by a park and I often walk in the park daily. And what I've noticed is that the younger generation, your age, all right, they don't tend to look at the person, even though I'm smiling at them. So I came across this study and it said, wave, just do a little wave, because that movement catches their attention and people will wave back 99% of the time. So I'm smiling, but I've added my wave and I get a way higher rate of return, which is fun. So I encourage people to do this little experiment, when it's safe, and try waving and smiling, because you'll get a better return on your investment.
Yeah, it some I've done workshops on connection as well around this as well, and people making eye contact, they get so uncomfortable nowadays. And I was like, is it because we're always looking at our phones? Everyone's always looking down, that they're used to being on FaceTime or on Zoom calls and not having to make direct eye contact with people, because people are rarely looking at their cameras, they're looking at the screens. And then when they're in person with people and someone is staring into their souls, they get uncomfortable and they try to look away or avert their gaze. But by maintaining eye contact, it's it's so much easier to be more, for me to be more vulnerable and to have a deeper conversation with someone. And it's truly being present with someone in that moment in a two-way conversation to maintain that eye contact, because it means that if I'm looking at you, then you're my priority in this conversation. If I'm averting my gaze, I'm being distracted by something else that has taken greater priority than this conversation.
I would agree. There's one caveat to it, though. We have many First Nations here, and there's some cultures where it's a shame thing to look in people's eyes. But if that is not the issue, then I am 100% in agreement with you. We have a society and a culture that they long to be known. They want connection, and yet they do the opposite of what is needed for connection. So I love the fact that you do look at them and you do smile and you try and make that connection, the same as me. Um, because that one little moment in time might be the only smile they get that day, or acknowledgement. And it says to people, hey, I'm important, you're important. And again, connection, just authenticity, the loneliness factor goes down. It's a beautiful way to connect, even if it's for like 1 second. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's these simple things that we can sprinkle into our day. And I like to frame them as side quests, because in a game, if you have a side quest, it's an optional. It means it's like, oh, that's an opportunity for me to get bonus experience, but I
Mhm.
don't need to do it. I get to choose if I want to do that. And
Right.
and it's almost, let's say, as a low barrier to entry to achieve extra experience today, if I make the time for it. So it's an easy win if I can implement that into my day. So there's a low barrier to entry to trying it out. And if I miss it, it's not like, oh, I'm after falling behind. I'll never get back on it again. It's like, oh no, I can just try again tomorrow. If I miss out on today, I can just try again tomorrow. It's repeatable. So by sprinkling in these small habits, that's what works for me. Again, not a cookie cutter approach, but it's something that I found is an easy win to boost your progress on a daily
Right.
basis.
So you have said something quite interesting several times in different ways, but I'll go back to the original way that you said it. You said you were standing in front of the mirror, you were smiling, this face is smiling back, and you did that after you brushed your teeth, or it was at this around the same time, whether it's before or after. So with tiny habits, when a person wants to change their habits, so let's say they realize they're workaholic, they're burning out, and they want to make one good choice, they need to anchor it to something they're already doing. So for example, we all have dead space. If people use the microwave and they put their coffee on for 45 seconds, that's 45 seconds of dead space. So I used that to do deep knee bends because I wanted to strengthen my knees so I could garden without having knees that were, screaming at me. And it worked really well as long as I used the microwave. Well, now that I'm not using it, I have to anchor that to something else. So when I get up and I'm pulling my clothes out for the day, I do my deep knee bends then because my bed has a railing on it, not on the sides, on the back. Okay. And I just do it there. And then just that one change, okay, because I've anchored it, I'm pretty consistent at doing my deep knee bends again. So that's really critical. And the other thing is when you anchor and you're trying to change a habit, if you celebrate immediately after with a high five, pat on the back, a smile, okay, because when you smile, you're telling your brain you're okay, you're safe, and that helps motivate your brain to go, okay, we're shifting here, this is painless, we can do this. All right, so when you do the anchor, the change for me, it was the deep knee bends, and celebrate immediately after, seamlessly, your brain takes it as one object, and you will become much more successful at changing and creating better habits. So if somebody's burning out, workaholic, and they're working till all hours of the night, all right, set your clock for a half an hour early or something. Or when you go to bed, anchor that to turning off the Wi-Fi, because if you sleep with your phone by your head, and the Wi-Fi is on the other side, you are stressing your brain out. It's kind of like putting your head in a microwave and frying it. Like, a lot of people don't realize that. And even the people that wear the earbuds, without, I notice we both have the, they're not the cordless ones. These are a lot safer. The other creates, frequency that stresses your body. Yeah, they're handy, they're lovely, but they're a stressor that a lot of people don't recognize. And simple things like that, when you anchor, you make your change, and you celebrate, you will shift way quicker. And then, like you said, you added another thing on top of it, and you keep moving it forward, you can change a whole behavior with zero motivation, which is beautiful.
Yeah, you've mentioned a lot of times about having zero motivation or not waiting for motivation, because a lot of people, that's the one thing that holds them back from doing anything. It's like, oh, I just haven't been motivated yet. Oh, I'll wait until I feel motivated. Oh, I only do it on days when I feel motivated. So when someone says that they're like, "Oh, I'm just not disciplined enough to do that right now. I'm waiting until I feel a bit more motivated." What do you tell them?
It'll never come. There is truth in what they're saying, in that if you want to change something, it sounds like a contradiction, but if they don't change something, stress, burnout, chronic fatigue, health issues, that will become your motivator. All right. So if you recognize logically in your head that, okay, you need to start making better choices, with zero motivation, that is a logical choice, but they just have to recognize to take it down to the smallest denominator. So in the book Tiny Habits, this female senior executive wanted to start making breakfast rather than buying her meals. Her tiny habit was standing at the stove, turning it on, counting to 4, and turning it off. That was the start of her tiny habit. And then as she successfully did this, then she put the pan there on the stove and then turned it off. And eventually she's going, well, why don't I put some food here? And from that point, she began to create her own breakfasts, right? So recognition of what needs to be changed is the starting point. If you don't recognize that something needs to be changed, you won't change it because you don't recognize it. So you don't have to have the motivation, but I do encourage people to look at, okay, if you do not change anything, where will you be 5 years from now? They have to come to the recognition. So here's another fact about the brain. You cannot motivate anybody. You can't cajole them. You can't, plead with them. The motivation has to be internal. And when it becomes an internal, not an external motivator, then they will actually begin to make the choices. So somehow they need to look at what are the consequences if I don't change. Now, the brain is very much in denial that health crisis is going to happen to them. Like, they understand it about everybody else, but the brain will actually cause them to be in denial of their own reality, which is really interesting how the brain works on that one. But if I model for other people how to get help, how to stay out of a crisis, which I can now do, having walked out of my own, then people, if they see that modeling, may go, hey, I like the results. I like what's happening there. That's why I love what you're speaking about in the platforms that you're on, because you're modeling for them what to do, how to do it. And that's what inspires people, is those who have successfully, at least are one step ahead of them. And it says to them, I can do this as well. All right. So I do try and challenge people to think about where they will be if they don't change anything. And then if they're willing to do something, we look at what's the lowest, smallest thing that you can be successful at in order to move in the direction that you actually want to go. And they're usually very willing to work with it at that point.
Yeah, two things came up there, and one is that for people who don't feel motivated, fear and pain are the greatest motivators. And it's great to be able to do something without relying on fear and pain to be the only reason you're doing something. And the other is that when you're healthy, you want to do 1,000 things. And it's trying to make a decision, oh, which thing can I do because I have 1,000 things? But when you're not healthy, you only have one motivation, and that's to get well again. So when you are healthy, it's better to prioritize your health. You can still do 1,000, you still have the opportunity to do 1,000 things. Well, you can only really focus on a few. So we can do anything, but not everything. But it's like, for me, one thing that motivates me to take care of my health, to take care of my emotional well-being and my mental well-being, is that every activity I do to take care of those are gifts to my future self. So anytime I think of them, I'm like, if I'm doing an activity right now, will 40-year-old me regret it, or will 50-year-old me be thankful that I did this? So similar to your deep knee bends, if I take care of them now, will they be in better shape when I'm in 20, 30 years from now?
Right, but your motivator is that you lost your health and you don't want to go back there. See, I hear you speaking from someone who's lost her health, has wisdom, and does not want to go back there. And that's the same for me. But those that have not lost their health, it's very, very different. I think of, and I apologize because I cut you off there, but I think of a family man, all right, that he wants to provide for his family. That's his biggest need and motivator. And if he has to work 2 or 3 jobs to do this, he's going to put himself on the back burner in order to, work with his primary motivation, which is his family. So there's multiple different things coming in here, but again, challenging that mindset, going, okay, you're burning the ends on both ends right now. How long can you sustain that? What's going to happen? Can you provide for your family if you go into a major health crisis? And challenging some of the thinking, then they might shift their priorities, but it really is a lot about priorities. For you, before you went down, and for me, before I went down, it was about getting the job done. It was about identity, a false identity. It was about all these wrong motivators. But I hear you speaking from a place of health and wisdom now, because you got burnt and I got burnt, and the same with me. Very different for someone who has not got burnt. So I'm going to say the same thing you said, but this is how I read it. A person with their health has 1,000 dreams. All right, changing the word to dreams. But a person without the health, they only have one dream, and that's to get their health back. And we were both in that situation of, we don't have our health. Now I only have one focus, and that's to get our health back. All right. But again, the brain minimizes and denies, saying it'll happen for everybody, but it won't happen to me. That's how the brain handles it. And you've got to come in through the back door and get the brain to go, but I want to change. I want to change. I'm tired of this.
Yeah. Your example of, let's say, the father who's trying to do everything for his family, and that his family and his children are his big motivator. And I have come across this many times where they're saying, well, I don't have the time to take care of myself because I'm working 2 or 3 jobs to try and make ends meet. And it's not even, let's say, there is the risk of, again, burning the candles at both ends and completely burning out. But at the same time, because they're rushing around 2 to 3 jobs, they are irritable. They're destroying the relationship with their partner, with their family, with their friends, with their children as a result. So rather than trying to, again, on one end, trying to prevent them from burning out and no longer being able to support all of them, but at the same, not ruining their relationship with others in the day-to-day of it, where they're working 2 to 3 jobs. It's like, if you could focus on one and show up at your best at one job and create a healthy boundary so that you can be more present with your kids, that you don't just flop into bed as soon as you get home, and you're trying to take care of your family but you're never present with them. So what kind of life is that? It's again trying to have that quality of life, rather than,
Right.
it's living to work rather than working to live.
Right. So what I hear you saying is that you're helping provide options. When people don't feel like there's any options, and it's like a racehorse, they've got the blinders on and they can only see ahead of them. You're helping those blinders to open up and say, hey, you can work, be less tired, be fully present at your job, do this amazing job, rather than you doing minimal, and being present for your family, which is their priority. But options is one of the keys for people changing, is they need to know there are options. So for example, if a person's working 2 or 3 jobs trying to provide for their family, they don't have time to go to the gym. They don't have time to go play golf. They don't have time for a lot of those, benefits that come with relaxing and having some self-care. And so this is where one of the things I love to teach the people that I work with is a little brain hack. And see, when you get into exhaustion, when you get into burnout, chronic fatigue, health issues, you're now entering into a different part of the brain that's not logical. But it has a different language system than your logical brain. Right now we're using words, we're logical. But if you do these mini little pictures in your illogical brain, your emotional part of the brain, you can actually de-stress very quickly. And even if it's decades of stress, you can take it down. But you have to know how to work with the part of the brain that is stressed and running on high. That's that car engine that's not shutting off. Eventually, it's going to do damage to the engine. You got to know how to turn the key off so it can get a breather, even when you don't have time to go do the normal things that other people do. But if you just do mini, it's just like I was driving, I was doing a live speaking engagement. I was driving, then I found myself getting a little stressed. Thought, okay, I'm just going to use some of my tools. And I began to imagine as I'm driving, you know, I'm very focused on the road, but it's like in my mind's eye back, you know, on the screen here, I was surfboarding with a friend of mine who was a show off in the big waves. And by the time I got there, I was just laughing. You know, it was hilarious, the pictures that were going through my mind. And I was totally relaxed. I wasn't stressed when I went into that talk, and I did a very good job because I wasn't stressed, right? So anybody can take less than a minute, play these crazy, funny, clean, I'm going to say clean pictures, all right? And help your brain relax, because when you can laugh, when you can smile, you're telling your brain, I'm okay. When you can't smile, when you can't laugh, you're not okay, and the brain knows it. So again, if that's all you're telling your brain, you're on that train track now. Your brain will automatically go there, all right, without stopping, and you're setting yourself up for a crash. So I just encourage people to learn how to, you know, do these crazy pictures in their mind's eye, and it will really help bring down their stress. If they want to learn more about that, they can connect with me. I'd love to teach them, you know, and yeah, there's lots of tools that I have out there on that one. So.
And where's the best place for them to find you if they want to connect, Dorothy?
Well, my website is the best. So dorothyjcook.com, that should be in your notes, I believe.
Yes, that will be right in the notes.
That'll be in the notes. Yeah. So they can have a free consult. I also have a YouTube channel. It's Dorothy Cook 2024. I guess it would be at Dorothy Cook 2024, the year of 2024. I haven't had it very long. And there's lots of 1-minute shorts that I have about the brain and how to relax and do things and have fun. So that's another way they can check it out and learn some things, is just go to my YouTube channel.